Hi everyone, my name's Sarah. I'm a product manager at Clio. Clio is a legal practice management software based in Burnaby, BC. We're hiring for lots of roles if you're interested. While they figure that out, I'm just gonna roll with it and get started. So I was just wondering, can everyone that is currently a PM raise your hand? Okay, great. And if you are looking to become a PM, raise your hand. And if you're just here because you're curious about what this crazy field is, yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so a pretty good mixed bag. Oh, great, we have slides. That's a good place to start. Maybe we could go to the beginning, though. You get a preview of what the presentation's about. And let's see if this clicker works, because I kind of feel like it's not going to. It does not. It's okay. I'll just hang out by the laptop. It's cool. All right. So I'll start at the beginning then. Hi, I'm Sarah. We've met. So I wanted to give you a little bit about me before I get started, just so everyone kind of is starting from the same place. So like I said, I currently work at Clio. I've been there for about 10 months now. But I did not start my career in product management. I did a Bachelor of Commerce at UBC and graduated in 2014 and went right into marketing, actually, right out of university. And so I was at a company called Pulse Energy, working on energy intelligence software, marketing that to basically energy utilities, which is a pretty interesting customer segment to talk to. And they wound up getting acquired, so I wound up at Enernoc, also an energy intelligence software company. And that's when my career path started to shift. The company went through an acquisition, and I wound up getting laid off and took a product marketing role at a company called WineDirect, or was previously known as Vin65. And I was at WineDirect for about 3 months before I realized, oh, great, thank you. Great. Before I realized that there was a really kind of opportunity in the company. The co-founder had just left about 6 months prior to me joining, and we had a great development team, and they were just kind of writing code and didn't really know if they were writing the right code, didn't really know if they were actually solving customer problems. And I raised my hand and said, hey, like, I know you really want me to be marketing all of these great things that we're building, but why don't we take a step back and make sure we're building the right things first? And so I put my hand up and said, I would love to try my hand at product management. My brother's a product director. I was kind of familiar with it as a career path, saw it as an opportunity to get my foot in the door. The company said yes. Very grateful for that. That was the beginning of my PM journey. And I ended up staying at WineDirect for about 1.5 years. But ultimately, when you're self-taught, it can be, you can have a kind of imposter syndrome. You want that validation that you actually know what you're talking about. And so that's where I wound up at Clio. I get to work now on a team of 10 product managers. So I learn from all of these people that have really diverse backgrounds, really great skill sets. And that's where I'm at today. So I started this. We talked about PM roles. Does anyone that wants to become a PM tell me why they want to become a PM? Anyone brave enough? Sure.
I'm interested in the responsibility.
Okay.
The breadth of the role.
Okay, breadth of the role. Great.
Solving problems and enabling people.
Great.
I've been a developer for many years, and the last few years I've been talking to customers and getting ideas from them, even as a developer, and I really enjoyed that aspect.
Great. Okay, awesome. And what challenges have any of you encountered so far in getting into product management?
Experience.
Yeah. It's a hard role to get into, for sure.
Yeah.
Sticking to the opinions.
Okay. Trying to
be confident
yeah.
about my opinions.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Yeah, so definitely skills you can develop. And what I kind of want to talk to you about today is being a good PM is hard enough. Getting into this role is often even more challenging. So tonight's agenda, I'm going to talk to 4 different questions here. What is product management? I know we've got a varied level of experience here, so I'll go over that as well. What makes a great PM great? What can you expect if you work in this role? And what can you do to actually get into a PM role? So what is product management? Let's start there. Product managers are basically where the business, technology, and design components of your company all converge in order to solve customer problems and deliver value back to your market. It's your job to be the voice of the customer and to know everything about your market, about your customer, and be planning and thinking for a long-term vision. Lots of customers will say, and Bosky and Nubir started on talking about this, like lots of customers will say, well, I want this feature, but it's your job to go one level deeper and understand, but why? You can also think of a product manager as a coach. So as a PM, you don't write the code, you don't do the designs, unless you're in a really small company and you need to wear a lot of hats. But at a bigger company, you don't do any of that. But you still need to row your team in the same direction. You still need to establish goals. You still need to set vision. And it's ultimately up to you to make sure that your team is successful, that you're shipping the right product, and that you're delivering value to your customers now and in the future. Noah Weiss puts it really, really well here. I'm not going to go through all 10 of his slides, but I did give Piali the link to this deck. There's some great reading at the end if you're interested in taking a look. But he says, PMs have diverse backgrounds, murky responsibilities, and wildly varied expectations across companies. If you start interviewing for PM jobs, you will realize very, very quickly that every company has a slightly different view of what a PM should do, what their responsibilities should be. And it's kind of hard to be judged on whether you're doing the right thing. It's something we struggle at even at Clio with a pretty mature product organization. It's a really challenging thing to be measured as a product manager and to make sure that you're doing your job effectively. Another thought leader in this space that I find really fascinating is Brandon Chu, who works at Shopify. And he talks about how good PMs need to leverage both their left brain and their right brain in order to build and make good decisions. You need kind of the chaos and being able to talk to people married with that logic and reason in order to make sure you're delivering value over the long term. He puts it really well here, saying that great PMs are both hyper-rational and hyper-emotional. You can't have one without the other, because if you're only hyper-rational, it's going to be really, really challenging to develop empathy for your customers. And that's like #1 skill you need to be a good PM. Really have great empathy for your customers. On the flip side, you can't always be hyper-emotional because it's going to be very, very challenging for you to make the tough decisions and tell people in your company, no, we can't do that, this is why. So you kind of have to be balancing both of those things. And it helps you, by marrying those two, you also help yourself become a more influential product manager. Which brings me to what else makes for a great PM. These are kind of things that I wish I had known 2 years ago when I started going into this career path. You can look online and learn how to write stories or do story maps or anything like that. Like the really tactical stuff I taught myself, you can all teach yourselves too. It's not hard, and it's also really hard. Like I can't cover that in 15 minutes, but it's all things that you can kind of learn on your own time. But what I found more challenging to learn on my own time was, how should I be thinking about product management? How should I be thinking of myself as a product manager? And what can I do when I'm interviewing customers, when I'm interviewing for jobs even, to make sure that I'm articulating the way I think about this career path in a way that's going to resonate with the people that are hiring. So the first is great PMs leverage their influence to get shit done. This is kind of where the left brain, right brain thing comes in. You need both of those skill sets in order to develop influence. But essentially, because you don't write code, you don't get to say how many developers are going to be on what project. You don't get to do any of that stuff. So you really need to leverage your influence and champion yourself and your team and make sure that you are getting everyone in your company to row in the same direction. If everybody's kind of going towards different goals and isn't really aligned on what the vision is, what the strategy is, and even what goals you're trying to work towards, you're going to have a really tough time. So a great PM always knows how to leverage their influence and always knows how to interact with each individual stakeholder in order to make sure everyone's getting shit done. Great PMs also help their company make the right decisions. There's a common fallacy, and it's not surprising that people think this, that PMs always make all the decisions. That's not necessarily true. Maybe in a certain type of company you will, but often you're the one that actually has to make sure the people, even if it's your CEO, we talked a little bit about the highest paid person's opinion. We try to avoid things like that, but it's your job to help those people make the right decisions. And the way you do that, which I loved that Bosky and Nubir really, really hammered home, is that you need data. You need customer data. And that can be qualitative, that can be quantitative, but marrying the two is super important, because when you get to a meeting and someone says, I think we should build this, and you say, why? They say, well, because I think it's the right thing to do. You're like, okay, do you have some data to back that up? Usually the answer is no. Usually it's well, I heard this one thing and I think this is why we should do this, or, we had an angry customer call into support, so we should drop everything and address that one issue. And I know that can be really, really challenging for other departments to understand, and that's kind of part of our role, is to build that empathy across companies and across departments, to teach them that we're ultimately trying to make decisions for the long term and trying to make sure that we are delivering customer value so that we still have a company in 10 or 20 years. And data is a really important way for you to do that. And then the last one that is, I think, a little bit more challenging, and not every product company in Vancouver lives by this. Even Clio is still working towards getting into this mindset. But great PMs are driven by outcomes and not outputs. It's really easy to be output driven, because when you can say, oh, well, I shipped 5 features last year, people are like, oh, 5, that's a good number. But what does that actually mean? Is there any real outcome that you've delivered to your market or to your customer? Maybe. Do you have the data to back it up? I'd like to see that. But if you're driven by outcomes, you're going to be driven by delivering impact to your customers. You're going to set the right goals to make sure at the beginning of the process, like, hey, this is the metric that I want to move. And at the end of the day, sometimes you'll hit it, sometimes you won't. That's okay. Like Nabir said, sometimes you gotta throw it all out and start again. That happens. It's part of the process, and it's really natural. But if you're driven by outcomes, you're already thinking in the right direction. But what do I actually do? I know the PM role can be a little bit vague. Like I said, depending on what company you work at, it's gonna be different. Your expectations are gonna be different. Some companies will have kind of a more product owner that works really closely with developers in their day-to-day. Product managers are a little bit more strategic. At Clio, we cover the whole spectrum, so I work directly with developers all the way up to figuring out what my product strategy should be for the next 3 to 5 years. But this is a little snapshot. I spend a lot of time in meetings, like a lot of time in meetings. And essentially what I'm doing for all of these is the planning, so researching, strategizing, talking to customers, doing product discovery, executing, working with the developers to actually build what's going to solve that customer problem, and then communicating. Communicating at any size of company, but especially as you get into larger companies, becomes absolutely essential, because it's so easy for your stakeholders to get misaligned, and it's really easy to blame product when something goes wrong. So it's your job to make sure you're telling everyone, like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is why it's important to you, and then you can make sure everybody is aligned and happy, and that goes a really, really long way to making sure you're an effective product manager. It's not all glory. Some people think, oh, I want to be a PM because I get to make all the decisions and I get to be important, and it's just this awesome career path. And yeah, it's great, but it can also be really challenging. It can be pretty lonely. I like the mountain graphic, because I'm basically, sometimes you're kind of like on your own at the top of the mountain and you're like, hey guys, how's it going? And it's kind of hard to find people that really understand you and understand your role. And depending on the size of company that you work at, you might be the only product manager. I'm really fortunate to have lots of people on my team that I can go and vent to and get feedback from and talk to, but that's not always going to be the case, especially because Vancouver has so many startups, which is awesome, but it can be a little bit isolating. It's also hard because you got to say no a lot. People will come to you and say, well, like, we should build this, like, won't it be easy? And like, sure, you can take all the 10 different things that are really easy to implement, but every time you decide to do that, you push off something else that could deliver more value to your customers. And it's really, really challenging to kind of get that into people's mindset and have them thinking that way. And it just can create a few more headaches than is used to. So sometimes this is me. I'm the dog on fire meme who's just like chilling and saying, yeah, everything's kind of crazy, but it's fine. But it's also, sometimes I'm this kid who's dancing because something went really well. Like, we shipped something that our customers loved. And that is honestly, like, that is the drug that keeps me going. When you deliver something to your customers that solves their problems, that they love, it is so, so, so rewarding. This is a screenshot of a message that someone on our team shared after my team had worked on something that like seemed pretty inconsequential. Like we basically built a PDF version of an export that, who knew this was life-changing? And we got this video back of this customer on her little weird ball chair thing, like dancing. And she's like, yay, PDF exports. and Jasmine, who's one of our account managers, she shared that with the team. And I was just like, yes, like that is so, so, so cool. And totally makes all of the stress and hardship of being a PM absolutely worth it. So what about landing a PM gig? I know not everyone here is interested in becoming a product manager, but I want to touch on it a little bit just in case this is a career path you want to go down. I'm happy to chat afterwards as well if you even want to, bounce questions off me. I know like Nabir, I helped him with his resume like back in the day, like there's lots of things we can do to help people get into this industry, and I think it's really, really critical that we do that. But as far as getting in, I think you really need to think of yourself as the product. You need to establish product market fit, and that means that not every company is going to be right for you. I don't come from a technical background, for example. I have a business degree. I don't write code. But that means I'm not going to go and apply for a job where the job description says must write code. Kind of a given, right? But people don't always think that way. Like there's lots of different, because the PM role is so varied and there's so much different opportunity, you just have to find the company that's going to be right for you and that aligns to your skill set. And they're absolutely out there. The way that you do this is honestly by networking. I was talking to my manager, Eric, a couple weeks ago, and we just recently hired a whole new round of PMs. Our team has grown, and we were talking about how people have found Clio and how they got into being PMs at Clio. And out of the last 20 people that he has hired in product manager positions, only 4 of them came from a direct application. All others came from referrals and from his network, or from our network, from us talking at events like this and talking to people and just learning about people. So you really need to be kind of put on your brave face and go and meet people and ask people for coffee. And the great thing about this community is, and I actually love like seeing some familiar faces here, like it's so, so great. And the great thing about this community is that people are really, really willing to share their story and to share their thoughts on how you can break into a role that is a little bit challenging to break into, there's no doubt. So that's an offer to you all as well. If you want to take me for coffee, I'm down. But there are also some other things you can do. These are 3 kind of certifications that I did when I was making that transition from product marketing into product management. Excuse me. So Certified Scrum Product Owner is a program done by Scrum Alliance. I think they do them like every 6 weeks or so. Agile 42 is the like professional body that I did that through. That was a really interesting one for learning basically about more the tactical parts of being a PM. Writing stories, building a feature, shipping a feature, that sort of thing. Pragmatic marketing was the first course I took, and I actually think was the most valuable. It's of course the most expensive because that's just the way life works. Yeah. But pragmatic marketing was really great because I think that the most important thing that resonated for me there was nothing important happens in the office. And that's so true. Like you really need to get in front of your customers. I mean, you can do it in the office from your phone, but like you really need to be talking to your customers. And that was kind of their, I believe it's called Foundations. Their Foundations course was what made me really realize like, hey, like this is a career path that I'm really interested in and that I think I could kick ass at. The third is BrainStation. BrainStation does, I believe it's like a 10-week course that I took. It was kind of like for me a bit of a checking the box to like get my job title to be product manager, but I found it really valuable, particularly for the networking. I met a lot of really, really bright people in that program, and I also learned about all these like Slack channels and that sort of thing that I had no idea existed until I took that program. So great from a networking perspective as well. And then there's also Women in Product. So Women in Product is a basically organization that's based in San Francisco, but they've got chapters all over the US. They don't really have a formal one in Vancouver, although we've kind of started our own rogue one. But they've got a lot of great articles on, how to find a mentor, how to break into this field. And they're all the articles are written by female product managers in Silicon Valley who have a ton of experience. So that's a really good resource as well. So like I mentioned, Women in Product Vancouver, I'm actually on the organizing committee for that. We've got, I think there's a few people here who attended our last event, and we've got our next one coming up in October, but that's a great one where even if you're not a PM, come hang out, we want to talk to you. And then Product Management Association of BC, or Product BC, is, I think they've been around for quite a while, but they've kind of been going through a bit of a change recently where they're trying to become a little bit more relevant to the community. So they've got a mentorship program that they're just designing right now. They've got a lot of great meetups, and Women in Product Vancouver and Product BC will likely be partnering on some events as well. So it's a great place to come and meet PMs, learn from people, and just generally talk to the community. So that's all I got. I know that was a lot of information. I'm happy to touch on anything else you want, and then I've got a bunch of links at the bottom here if you want to take a look. Piali can share the deck with you. But yeah, any questions? What can I tell you more about? And thank you, by the way.
Let me just add something, Sarah. This I thought really. So yes, I did meet Sarah about 3-4 months back when I was still in UBC, and she looked at my resume and she told me, "Oh, I see that you have some transferable skills, but here's how to market it from the product standpoint." So I guess what I'm trying to get at is the Vancouver community for product is pretty closely knit, and they're willing to help. And I think she hit it the point right there. It's about networking, and you will not all companies will align with your skill set. So be interviewing and be talking to people, and if somebody from a completely non-technology background could get into it, everybody can. I thought I couldn't because there's nothing relevant. But there is. You just have to find it and market it. So.
You're inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone else? Yeah.
Can you just list a few of the core competencies you feel are important for product managers?
Yeah, so kind of, I went through them really quickly, but communication skills, like absolutely critical. Empathy for your customers. Learning to speak in a language that's not feature or solution driven, but instead customer problem driven. I think a lot of people make mistakes when they're first entering this career path saying like, oh, well, I built this feature. It's like, cool, but what does that actually mean? And that's not really the right way to think about it. So if you can kind of shift your mindset to be a little bit more problem focused. We had a PM who's now moved on to Segment, which is great for him, but he was notorious for always walking into a room and saying, so what problem are we trying to solve? And that's just like a really key way to start thinking about being a product manager. Organization skills are pretty important. There's often a lot going on, and making sure you've talked to every single person you need to talk to about every single thing you need to talk to them about can be a little overwhelming. So yeah, communication, empathy, talking about customer problems and organization are kind of the things that I think have gotten me pretty far so far.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can add to that. So my background is development as well. Then I'm also in product right now. So what I felt most challenging for me was, since I was a developer and I was like always into code, even after I'm asking the question to customer that, okay, tell me about this problem, I'm already imagining the solution in my head because I know the code structure, I know this is how I'm gonna code. So before he could answer, I knew my solution. So that was a really difficult struggle because I had to kind of shift that mindset that you just have to listen and you kind of have to have that bigger picture in mind. Not like, as Bosky was saying, it's not about the red button and blue buttons. It's like, what are you trying to get out of it? So if you are from a development background, this is probably one of the most common challenges you might face because you're always in that solution mode, not really in the problem zone. But that takes a little bit of experience, I think.
And if you're a developer interested in going into product management, go to your PMs at your company and ask to sit in on customer interviews. Like if you're not already doing that, like you're missing out. You need to do that because that shows the PMs like, oh, cool. It's really nice to see a developer that's interested in getting to the original problem. But it's also a really great experience for you, so that when you actually get to a point where you're ready to interview customers, you've kind of got the ropes a little bit down. Yeah. We do that actually at Clio. We have all like my development team sits in on interviews with me, and if they're not, like that's a red flag.
Yeah, like one of my mentors when I was trying to transition from development to product, she could see my struggle that okay, I'm always imagining this UI layout and stuff like that. So she kind of gave me like a handy tip that whenever you think that you are feeling that way, just ask why.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you think it's a red button, why? Just if you are out of totally like any ideas, just ask why. So if you keep asking why, you'll see that okay, what you are missing out. So that's kind of that helped me the
Yeah.
most. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a question?
What are some tips you have to motivate your team?
Oh, that's a great one. I find with my team helping them, like when they're in the process where they get to understand the customer problem, that's already like half the battle because they really understand like we're not just building a feature, we're not just making the button red, we're doing something because it's actually going to solve a customer problem. So I'd say like that's the first bit is getting people and getting your team involved in that really early on, and then setting like compelling goals. We I don't personally do this. I've got a PM at Clio that says like if you're late to stand up, you don't get to participate. So like you can make really kind of like fun competitions and that sort of thing that drive people to meet a certain goal. But ultimately, like if you're saying, hey, we're trying to hit X and sharing with them the progress towards that, if you want to know how many customers are using XYZ feature, like sharing that with the developers goes a really long way for them to build customer empathy so that they understand what you're doing and why their job is really important. Yeah.
So, coming from a developer background, so what do you think is like the right time to transition from a developer role to a PM role? I know it could be like a subjective answer, but like I'm just a bit lost or like need some guidance.
You might be able to answer this a little better than I can.
For me, it was that realization that like when I was given a project, like you have to build this feature, I built that feature, it's out, and then I had no visibility, right? What happened with the feature? Why did I code it at the first place? So I was a developer for 3.5 years, and then I realized that I'm not really content with that solution. I want to know why. So that kind of triggered me because I didn't know about product either. So I talked to my manager. I'm like, why did I code for like 1 month, 12 hours a day for this particular feature? Who asked for it? Why? Why am I trying to solve? And what happened after I just shipped it out? Did it go through? Did it make his life easier? So then he kind of introduced me to the product. So if you have that kind of mindset that you want to know uh, the source of the story or the end of the story is kind of like the end-to-end picture, then probably you are already thinking in product terms.
Yeah, and also from like the career path point of view. So if like I'm just starting, I'm new to the product management phase, and I'm also like just starting out in my software developer career.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be in a position where I am not like established in my technical skills,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just quickly transition to product management. But what if I find out, oh, product management is not like something for me neither. I'd like to go back, but I'm not like established in my technical background either. Then so that's why I was wondering, so when would be like the right time to
So I would say if you are already in a developer role, so why don't you give it a try and then what Sarah said, just sit in some customer calls, because you will already have some ideas or thoughts in your mind, right? It's time to validate that. So like for me, I made that switch within my company. I didn't go out and just start from scratch because I was scared too that what if I just leave this job and then I don't end up anywhere. So then what I did is I just kind of shadowed my senior PM that what you do. Like 20% of my time, I'm just going to sit with you in all the customer calls, what kind of documentation you write, and just trying to figure out if that excites me. If I found out like it's boring, I cannot do that anymore, then you have the way back. So Yeah.
Yeah, I think like finding opportunities in your existing company is a really great way to do it. It's much lower risk.
Exactly. Probably just
Yeah.
talk to your manager.
Yeah.
And just let him know that you are interested. Probably just kind of like spend 10% of your time. Just talk to a PM. Just walk in her shoes and see if you like that.
Okay, great.
I think there were one back there, and then you, and then we'll do you.
So you both, like all the speakers have talked about the glory and what happens after you ship out a feature, and it's like positive feedback. What happens when you ship out a feature and you find that it doesn't solve the problem of the customer? How do you bounce back? And do you find your things find yourself doing something new that you haven't put part of your product discovery process before? Do you focus on a particular stage? What are some ways for you to bounce back from that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're doing it right, ideally you never get to a point where you've shipped a finished product and your customer is only just giving you feedback. So we like if you're a developer, you know what agile is. Like we from a PM standpoint want to do the same thing. So we start at product discovery. We identify all of the customer problems. Our product design team whips up some solutions. We show those to customers. We show those to support people. We show them to sales, get feedback. Sometimes you get, hey, this sounds great conceptually. Let's see what it's like. You build a prototype. You turn it on for a few customers, see what their feedback is, incorporate what changes they're looking for, or if you need to pivot directions, or maybe even it's just not going to work, you close it off. So by the time you've kind of done all that, and it's a slow process in that sometimes it can take a while to actually like ship your finished product. It's a fast process in that you're really iterative and you're really comfortable with change and you're really comfortable with collecting that feedback, and you don't get to the very end and you're like, oh, they hate my feature. Like your main goal is to like get ahead of all that and try to make sure that you've covered your bases really early on. But I mean, you can do all that and you can ship stuff that people don't like. I've had it happen to me. It's not very fun. And you just have to have a plan for how you're going to recover. It's really it. It's like, what's your contingency plan? If people don't like this, are we going to roll it back? Are we going to make some changes right away? Just if you know that up front, it gives you confidence. Like you can tell the team like, hey, if this doesn't work out, we've got a plan. Yeah. Okay. I think it was you, and then you, and then you, and then you. We'll start with you at the back.
My question is on the topic of creativity. I come from a technical background, hardware engineering. So in that field, it would be like making something new, something that hasn't been done before, solving an interesting technical problem. But in the context of product management, what is creativity? Like, what are some of the examples where you have done something creative to solve a problem, an important problem in a unique way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it'll really depend what kind of company you work at on what kind of PM they want. So there's like at Clio, for example, we're in the process of diversifying our product line. We're building a whole new product on the side, and like we've got a PM that is an entrepreneur by training. Like, well, not by training. Like he was just an entrepreneur. He'd started his own company. Really great fit for building something like that. And so he's on that project. Whereas some of us, other people are kind of like more business focused. Like we've got business backgrounds, we've got workflow backgrounds, and we're working on like the case management workflow for a lawyer, for example. And so it's making like those smaller tweaks, perceivably smaller tweaks that actually deliver a lot of value in the long run. So it's going to depend where you're at. For me personally, like I don't really get into the solution space because it's my job to really hone in on the customer problem and then work with my product designer to do the solution. He's the one that ultimately owns the solution, as the developers are ultimately responsible for implementing it. But my job is to make sure they've got all the right information to make those decisions. And then I think you were first.
So my question was around getting experience,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the job postings say you need 2 years, 5 years of experience. As someone coming from a technical background, I have over 20 years of technical experience, which I think almost works against me. And we didn't really have any PMs that we could shadow because we used to do the PM work ourselves.
Right.
As a consulting company. What else can you do other than looking within your own company to kind of get experience so you can kind of showcase that almost?
So I would encourage you to ignore the 2 to 5 year recommendation on the job posting.
Okay.
And find out who the product leader is at that company and ask them for coffee. It doesn't have to be in the context of you wanting a job. It can just be in the context of you getting to know them, getting to know their company, trying to understand what problems they're encountering. And then as you develop that relationship, no, absolutely not. No. People, like, honestly, it's, yeah, networking is really, really essential.
Because if you go by the formal channel, they're gonna look at your resume and all these X's and Y's. But if you know the right person and you know who to talk to, you can step the first three.
Like, I didn't apply to my job, my current job. I never applied for it.
Neither am I.
Like, and if you're networking, then you shouldn't have to apply for a job. Yeah, it's all back channel for sure. So it's all who you know. It's all those relationships that you've developed, and sometimes they take time. Like when I met my current manager, they weren't hiring for like an entry level product manager position, and we just like stayed in touch. And 6 months later, when he was hiring, he said, "Hey Sarah, I think you're great. Come work for me." And I was like, "Okay, cool. That sounds great." But if I had not established that initial connection, I never would have had that opportunity.
Like
Yeah.
I can definitely vouch for that because I changed country, right?
Yeah.
So my education, my network, my friends, everything was in Silicon Valley in US. Canada, I didn't know anybody. And then I decided to make the move. I didn't know even the company names because there are like thousands of startups. How would I know anybody?
Yeah.
But then I initiated my network from Silicon Valley. I started talking to people that, hey, I'm moving to Vancouver. Do you know anybody? And they spread the word. And before I could even land in Canada, I had 3 offers.
Oh.
So everything happened online. I didn't even have to come here for an onsite because they heard from somebody that I was doing great there, and they were like, "Oh yeah, fine, just let's do a Skype interview." So this is the power of networking. So you can bypass like all the written rules and everything just by knowing the right people at the right time.
I think you said how did I get to know him? Was that your question? So one other thing, no, honestly, like one other thing that I think is really important, and like I've talked to a lot of people looking to get into product management as well, and one of the most important things is like treating the people that you're talking to like your customer. Like show genuine interest. What problems are they? What are they working on? Like why are they working on that? If you can go and have coffee with someone and really like be genuinely interested in what they're doing and show that you have empathy for them and that you want to learn more about what they're doing and why, that A, demonstrates that you're going to be a good interviewer when you start talking to customers, and B, just like shows that you're actually genuinely interested in this career path. And even if they're not hiring at that exact second, doesn't mean they're not going to be hiring 3 months from now and think like, oh, actually I had a really great coffee that 3 months ago. I should follow up with that person.
Yeah.
I think you had a question.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, like, I know you touched upon it when you were like, it's so rewarding when it does succeed. It's like, what is your favorite part about like your job? Yeah.
Oh man, that's a hard one. It's endlessly challenging.
Yeah.
I think like product management is a career path that's almost impossible to master. Like you will always be learning something new. And for me, that was really important. I got pretty bored pretty quickly in marketing. And like I've yet to be bored in the last 2 years of being a PM. Like it's just constantly challenging. And with challenges is obviously ups and downs, but that's why like the dog on fire meme is like my favorite just because it just so accurately reflects much of my life. But yeah, it's just like on ever changing and ever challenging.
I've got a few questions. Speaking about features and ideas and values, do you have any tips about prioritizing those features and ideas when you're doing the product discovery or whatever presented to the team?
Yeah. So I think it's really important to start with the goal. What problem are you trying to solve? And depending on the size of the company, like at Clio, we have like company-wide OKRs and the objectives and key results that we as a company are all rowing towards. So when we look from a product strategy of like what should we actually be doing, we're going to choose things that are going to align to those OKRs because that's where the company's headed. We want to support that. And so knowing that goal allows you to then say, okay, well this fits, this doesn't, this fits, this doesn't. And you're going to deprioritize the stuff that doesn't fit and you're going to prioritize the stuff that does fit. On a smaller scale, you can do the exact same thing. If I know I'm working on this workflow that I want to make faster for my customers because they're challenged because it's too slow, it's taking up too much time in their day, I'm going to know that's the ultimate goal, and I'm only going to prioritize work that works towards that goal. Yeah, because otherwise there's like, that's one of the hardest things about being a PM is like there's so much you could do. Like you could do anything. But the idea is to work on the right thing.
Okay, we'll have one more question. Okay.
Another question is what you don't like about product management. Is
What
there
I
one thing that you
what I
like?
don't like, it can be political sometimes. Yeah, because you're managing stakeholders. Not everyone gets along. It can be a little bit annoying to do that political dance. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I
Okay.
think
You can email me or let's talk. It's cool.
yeah.